So our cards had to have a cohesive theme to them. So I chose making my own pattern papers using Altenew Crisp Eye inks and Altenew stencils. So I made a couple patterns you can see here, one of each pattern for him and for her. And the technique I used for the stencils was to start with one ink and then lift the stencil up and turn it or change it slightly and then use a different ink or a different hue. The third set, they're just a watercolor wash using Crisp Dye inks, water, and a watercolor paintbrush on Altenew watercolor paper. For the pattern papers made with the stencils, I was able to get 2 cards for each paper by either die cutting or just cutting out pieces and splitting them up between cards. The watercolor wash papers I used just for one single card. So this will show you how I made the pattern paper with the wavy grid stencil. And I'm just taping behind with some washi tape. Hold that stencil in place. And I'm using Ocean Waves and Dusk ink. I'm just blending the color in. And I'll keep it darker around the edges and lighter towards the center. Whoop, tape did not hold. Now I have to realign it. Try a different taping technique here. Now I'm going to turn the stencil, and I'll start with the second color, Dusk. And this is the same technique that I used for the ladies version of this. I just used different colors. For the ladies, I used Razzleberry and Pinkalicious. So I have my pattern paper that I made with teacups and saucers, and I'm just taking a little Ocean Waves ink and a watercolor paintbrush and lightly painting them. Now I'll take a little Desert Night, and I want the little flowers to be a little bit darker. So I'm just kind of going over those with the Desert Night. So now I'm using forest glades to color my coffee cups. And for a few of the plates in the stack, I used maple yellow. Now I'm using my Altenew gold pen to put the trim on the teapots and the cups. And now I'll erase my pencil lines. And now I'll tape my top and bottom pieces in place. Now add a seam towards the bottom. And now I'll glue the finished panels to my card base. Add in some sparkly sequin. Do a little design on each of the envelopes to match them up, and a little bit on the inside of the card. For this card, I wanted to make my own stencil using the Sunray die from the Rain or Sunshine stamp set. I was able to get the Big World layering guide off of the Altenew website. Thankfully, they have all of their layering guides online. Just need to go to their store site and look up layering guides and find the stamp set that you need. And they can be downloaded to your computer or printed out. For my world, I'm using Ocean Waves, Grass Field, and Hunter Green. And I had some white parts in there where I didn't quite get the layering right where it should be, so I was trying to fix it. Now I'm using jet black to stamp the globe holder. And I will die cut all this out. So here's a technique that I like to do for edges. When I want to heat emboss an edge, I use a little 1/4 inch usually of double-sided sticky tape. And line it up, and then I put my embossing powder on it. Off-screen heat embossing. And then when you heat set it, it comes out fairly nice. Makes a nice crisp edge. There you have it. For the ladies' card, I used the Colorful Soul stamp set, and the flowers were in chamomile, snapdragon, marigold, citrus burst, fresh lemon, and maple yellow. The leaves are frayed leaf, grass field, and hunter green. So here I have my acetate stencil that I made. And I'm going to use Sunray ink to stencil on the sun rays. So my little globe holder, when I die cut the image that I stamped, it was very difficult to line up. So I just die cut it out of black cardstock. My earth is upside down. Had some areas on the saying that didn't stamp completely. So I'm just fixing that up with a little ink there. So now I'll do the square weave stencil pattern paper. And I want to make sure that I'm blending on the smooth side of the watercolor paper. It takes blending a little bit better, and it has a smoother look to the inks when they're blended on the paper. When I blend, I start towards the outside, usually off of the paper, and scoot the ink in. This keeps from getting blotches of dark ink that you can't blend out. And I'll clean my stencil off good, since I'm actually using a different color. I'll turn my stencil and line it up to get a crosshatch or weave type pattern. So this will be the one for the gents, and I'm using Ocean Waves and Snapdragon. Color test. And same as the wavy grid one, I use this same technique for the ladies version of this. The colors I used for the ladies versions are Coral Berry and Frayed Leaf, with the exact same technique. I did later, before making my card with this one, decide that the center was a little too light. So I did go back in and make the center area a little darker. You'll be able to see that when you see me making cards with it. I'm going to use this set of pattern papers for 2 cards. One will be a window card with cupcakes inside, and the other will be a shaker card using the background pieces that I've cut out. So I have a piece of scratch paper to practice my cupcakes on and to choose what colors I want to use. So I tested some cupcakes, papers and frostings and cake, and decided on the colors that I wanted to use for the final project. So now I'm making my final ones on my Nina Solar Crest paper. And so my orange wrappers are Sunkissed Orange Cream and Autumn Blaze. Pardon my head. I have to be able to see over to layer, and so now I'll do some blue wrappers, and they're going to be Mountain Mist, Volcano Lake, and Lagoon. now I'm making my cakes. I'm making pink frost, or frosty pink, sorry, for some strawberry cupcakes. Some dark chocolate for chocolate cupcakes, and then I used caramel toffee to make vanilla cupcakes. Now I'm adding my icings. So the icing colors for my strawberry icing, it is Pink Diamond and Pinkalicious. My lemon icing is Fresh Lemon and Maple Yellow. And my chocolate icing is Milk Chocolate and Dark Chocolate. So delicious. I tried to mix match my icings with my cakes. Strawberry and vanilla, chocolate strawberry, strawberry and lemon. So I have my cupcakes all die cut out, and I'm using some Wink of Stella to make the frosting look nice and shimmery. You have to use a light touch with it because it will re-wet the inks, which means it could blend them away or smear them. So now I'm just placing my sayings down so that I can see where I want my cutout for the window to be. And my sayings will come from Label of Love. And here's me overthinking it. So now I have both the ladies and the gents card. I have the windows die cut out of them. And now I'll arrange my cupcakes how I want to see them through the window. And here's me overthinking it. I use a little bit of washi tape to tape the pieces once I have them where I want them. It just kind of holds them in place and it doesn't damage the paper or your inking. But that way I can flip them over as a whole unit and tape the back. And then I forgot which one was which. So I'm using some foam tape. It'll give a nice pop-up to my little window. Now I'm stamping the greetings on a separate piece of paper so I can cut them out. And I usually stamp a couple of each just in case one messes up or I mess up cutting it. And I'm using Lagoon and Autumn Blaze. I'll pick the best ones and use those. Give them to my card base. Little decoration for inside the card. Now for some bling. I stamped some cupcakes on the envelopes. I'm making a shaker card, and it is from Seasonal Scene Building. I'm using the leftover cutout from the previous card. So the ink was a little blotchy on the stamp, so I re-inked it so that I could get a good image. So I'm going to just color in the leaves. I'm going to use my blending tool and a little bit of the greens, frayed leaf, and just kind of blend in to give it just kind of like a light coloring. I'm making sure to go a little farther past the edges so that I'm not left with white edges around the die cut. And I'm using a little bit darker, kind of the edge of the blending tool to kind of get it a little darker down the centers. It'll be die cut out. So now I'm finding the placement where I want the cutout for the shaker card. So I want it to kind of look like a little flower blooming. The leftover cutout is bigger than the cutout for the actual shaker opening, so that the pattern paper will be the background for the shaker. Now I'm just finding the exact spot where I want that background image to be placed, and I'll trace around it so I can glue it. And my pencil line won't show up, it'll be covered. And double check before I smush it down. So now I'm cutting a piece of acetate big enough to cover the opening. So I made a little flower pot that the flower can sit in, and it can also be used for my saying. And I'm using the little strip from the leftovers to put across the top. So now I'm working with the male shaker card. Part of the video for the rest of the female shaker card did not come across, so I will show you the technique I used to make the shaker here with the male card. So I'm using my cutout, and I will, the cutout is from the previous card, and I'll die cut my TV. So now I'm using some foam tape strips, and I'll go as close to the window as I can there. Now I'm going to test it with some sequins inside. It was a little too full, so I'm going to clean up my sequin mess. And I'm going to put another layer of foam tape strips on top of the previous one. And this will give it extra height to give more room for my sequins to shake around. Now I'm just adding foam tape strips for when I hook the TV on, and I'm doing them in 2 layers like I did around the window, so everything is nice and even. Using my pre-embossing powder, the anti-static powder, and I rubbed that on the inside to take the sticky out of the foam tape on the edges so that the sequins don't stick to it. It also helps to take out some of the static from the acetate as well. And I'll fill it with my sequins. And put my TV background over top. There we go. And I also have a strip of the pattern paper left over from my window card, the male window card, and I'll put that on the edge to tie all that in nicely. And tape the panel to my card base. Stamp a little design to my envelope. I'm using Altenew watercolor paper. To help keep my paper flat on the surface, I took my water and wet the back and laid it down on the surface. That helps kind of keep it stuck to the surface so it lays flat while you're working with it, usually. So this is my watercolor wash paper. And I'll be using Parrot for the middle. And I've just placed some ink on my silicone mat and added some water to it. And just using a paintbrush to move it around. No real rhyme or reason to it, just and then the blue, this is Tide Blue. I'm kind of doing a wet on wet technique. Wet the paper first and then add color to it. That helps it kind of move around better. I dabbed off some of the color, some of the water, and because I wanted to make the blue around the edges a little darker than what it was coming out to. So I'll use my watercolor wash paper to do the inlaid die cutting technique. I'll use a black background. And a black mat. I'm using the base fillers, stamp set, and dies. And now just see where I want my leaves to be. I've already stamped, embossed, and die cut my leaves and my saying. Tape down the I'll tape down the die cuts where I want them. So I have my cutouts all made, and I've glued my watercolor wash panel to black cardstock, which will be my backing. And now I'm just fitting pieces back in. Whenever you die cut the images out, you always want to make sure that you save all of the little bits. You may have to puzzle them back in later. Now in this one I had images that overlapped one another, so I had to make some pencil lines and do some cutting to get everything to fit correctly. Now I'll start gluing my die cut pieces in. Starting with whichever layers I want on the bottom. Now this one I had a little piece that I had to puzzle back in. You can see there. And then another little tiny one right there. So this is the male card, and now I'm going to glue my leaves in. And then I turn the piece over and snip the overhangs off. And I'm making another little leaf piece for the female card. I felt the way that the leaves ended, it just didn't look right. So I've die cut that piece out, and now I'm kind of working with it to see, how I want to add it on there. I made a decision on what to do, and now I'm cutting off my leaves from the male card. Make sure you're careful to save little bits. I did have one little bit right there of the leaf kind of not cut off right. So I'm going to try to glue that back into place. And now I'll tape them onto a larger black mat. Give it a nice finished look. And then that gets taped to my card base. Yeah, I meant to cut that off earlier, but well, we got around to it. I'll do a little design on the inside of the card. And on the envelope as well. Yep, coralberry. Oh, the bling. Don't forget bling. Here's my inlaid cards. So here's a template that I made for my packaging, my box. I'm using the template to mark and cut out my chipboard. Wanted my box to almost resemble a recipe box, and I'm hoping that it will have some use once all the cards are mailed off. And I'm making sure all my box pieces fit together. Just lining them up, making sure I don't have to trim off any edges or anything like that. Now I'm using my template to mark and cut out the inside box coverings. This is my inside box coverings, and I'm just crafting up the edges, making sure they fit. And now I'll glue them all in place. Get any air bubbles out. Now I'm starting to assemble the box, placing the back onto the bottom piece. Just using some jars to hold it upright. Now I've put on the sides, and now I'm gluing to add the front. And there it is. I'm using these square weave stencils. These will be the back and the front. I'm using Ocean Waves and Wisteria ink. And using my templates just to make sure I have them big enough. I had to do some overlapping because my stencils were not long enough. And then for the sides, I'm using the square weave stencil again with Frosty Pink and Frayed Leaf. I wanted to use subdued colors from my cards as well as making a pattern paper like I did on my cards to kind of tie the whole thing in together. For the masculine colors, I did use a purple, the Wisteria ink, instead of a yellow or a green, because I wanted it to match better with the interior of the box. And also my recycled element. Now I have my outside coverings. They are cut out, and I'm going gently over the edges, so you're not just left with white edges. Just make sure you do this very gently because you don't want to ruin your felt pads on your ink pads. So as you can see, I've painted the outside of my box white, and now I'm attaching the outer coverings to them. This is my recycled element. It's actually from produce packaging. And now I'm just deciding which charm I want to use. Made with love. Perfect.